everyone. I am Hallease, a digital storyteller and video producer, and thank you so much for hopping on to this challenge. So, today and probably tomorrow as well, we will be doing a little bit of audio editing. If you have gone through and downloaded the assets I provided to you, you'll be able to edit a mini podcast with me and Andrew. So hopefully you've gotten a chance to download those. Today, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you some of the audio tricks that I use to balance audio in my video podcasts when I do obviously longer form ones. And also, I'm going to show you a little bit of captioning as well. And don't worry, if we don't get to a captioning today, we'll hop into it tomorrow. So yeah, it's going to be a good time. Again, thank you so much for joining wherever you're joining from. I'm so happy to see you. We've got some moderators in the chat as well. So feel free to ask questions. Hopefully we can get around to answering them. And yeah, let's get started, I guess, huh? So as you can see, we have Premiere Pro set up. This is actually my finalizing workspace. So now that we're going to officially move into some audio editing, I'm going to go ahead and move us to the audio workspace. And for those of you who don't know, you can always mess around with all the different workspaces up here in the top corner. All you have to do is zoom in here, click that, and then find what workspace you want to work in. I want to do audio, so I'm just going to hit it. And that'll readjust a few things on our in our overall layout. So the project I've provided to you has this super rough edit of a podcast, again, with me and Andrew. You can see I am the top layer here, and Andrew is our bottom layer. So the first thing we want to do before we kind of watch the episode, let's go ahead and make it to where it's split screen. Andrew is on one side and I'm on the other side. The easiest, quickest way to do that is to head over to your effects tab. If you don't have it up for some reason, just go to window and go to effects. And then we're just going to use the crop tool. Super, super simple. I'm typing in crop just to bring it up faster. And then I'm going to drop it onto me. And then we're going to go into our effects controls. And we're just going to first go to position, scoot me over. And let's have me like right about here. I'm looking at my safe margins. If you don't have these safe margins, it's this icon right here, turns them on and off. So there you are, off, on. And then we're gonna mess with our crop here. So we want the left side of my screen to come in and more or less try to balance it. It's gonna be like a 29 point. I don't know, like 4 or 5, somewhere in there. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I got it perfectly. That was amazing. Be amazed at that because that usually takes a second. Anyway, and then we're gonna go down to Andrew, and then we're gonna scoot him over so we see his handsome face. And now we have a lovely video crop. And then we're going to make sure to replicate this across the whole timeline. So all I'm going to do is go to motion and crop, highlight both of them by holding down the command key on a Mac. I think it's Alt on a PC, and then Command C, Control C, and then just paste that to there. And now I'm good. And then the same thing for Andrew's motion, Command C, Control C, paste him, boom. And so now our little video podcast is ready to go. Let's have a quick listen to this really rough edit that I have done of our fake podcast. I'll make us full screen. Oh, wrong thing's full screen. Silly me. Hello, there we go. Wrong thing full screen again. Look at me. Guys, I'm a mess. It's Monday. And, oh, we see that we see our Zoom screen as well. Let's get rid of that. Zoom, go away. There we go. All right. All right, make sure our program monitor is selected this time. There we go. We got there, guys. It's Monday. Bear with me. All right, let's listen to our podcast. So, Andrew, thank you so much for being on this pretend podcast that isn't real, but is going to be great for everyone to be able to practice editing audio to, because I purposely have fans going on in the background so we can maybe mess with it in post and fix it.
Ooh, that's so fun.
What are your favorite animated shows right now?
Okay, so my favorite animated show right now, I love watching Bluey. If anyone's watched Bluey, you know that it is far superior to any other show. And this is such a hot take. I would rather watch Bluey than like SpongeBob or Rugrat, like any of those. Bluey, top tier. It's just really
Oh,
smart and really fun, and they all have Australian accents, and it's great.
that's amazing. Right now, I am currently watching The Dragon Prince. It's on Netflix. Super inclusive show. Like season one, they had a deaf she was like a guard, like a deaf guard, and she had like someone saying her whatever she's signing. And then there'd be
Oh.
moments. Yeah, it's like a super
I
inclusive
feel
show.
like that'd be super tough to animate, but like really, I need to watch that because that'd be really interesting because you never see that in animation. But that's really cool that they're
Yeah.
like, let's animate it.
No, and so there are whole scenes where you don't know what she's saying, technically, if you don't know sign language, obviously. You don't know what she's signing because it's like on purpose, she's trying to just have a conversation with her interpreter and like no one else. So unless you know sign language, you don't know what she's saying.
That's cool. Which, for all our video people that are watching, one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I went to a wedding and the videographers were hearing but had learned sign language so that they could talk during the ceremony. So like one would be on one side of the
All right. So, as y'all can hear, we have a delightful little conversation for y'all to work through. A few things you probably maybe heard through the live. Andrew, you can tell he has a little bit of kind of like reverb, like he has I can see in his background he has a lot of hard surfaces and things like that, so his voice is actually bouncing off things and it's a little tinny, so we're going to try to fix that. And then with me, I sound a little quiet, so we're going to work on my audio levels overall and try to just bring me up. So these are going to be some of the basic tricks that I use whenever I edit my video podcasts in Premiere Pro. So let's now go down back into the full, and let's start with Andrew. So, something I usually do whenever I do hear that there's just a lot of hard surfaces, I'll go into the audio track mixer. It's right here. And a lot of people don't notice that you can apply audio effects to an entire track. So, not having to put effects on every single individual audio clip, you can just apply them directly to the entire track by coming to this show hide effects and dropping it down. That brings all the options now you are able to, or all the different multiple effects you can add to an audio track. And I'm going to show you my favorites. So the first one I generally put on everybody is I go over to, where is it? I always forget where it is, even though I use it all the time. Filter and EQ, and I go to the parametric equalizer. This is like a really great baseline. All I did was double click on it to bring up this new editing window. This is a really great baseline default vocal enhancer that works for like literally almost everybody. And just adding that really gives everyone a nice clean tone. So I'm going to scoot it up and then we're going to just listen. I'm going to mute myself and we'll listen to Andrew a little bit.
Okay, so my favorite animated show right now, I love watching Bluey.
And so with it off,
If anyone's watched Bluey, you know that it is far superior to any other show. And this is such a hot take. I would rather watch Bluey than like SpongeBob or Rugrat, like
and
any.
you'll notice what I just did is I kind of brought up the mid levels in his voice just a little bit because me, myself, personally, I really like to bring out the bass or the baritone and the mids in anyone's voice, regardless of gender, regardless of how they sound. I just really love the way that sounds. So that's the first thing I generally like to do. The second thing I like to do is add a hard limiter. So that way, regardless of whether they're speaking low or high, it just kind of goes through and balances everything out. And hard limiter, for those of y'all who don't know, essentially what that does is it hard limits where the audio finally hits its peak. So for podcasts, I generally like to do a hard limiter of like -3 dB. I usually like to be pretty heavy with it because the point is to hear all the things happening in the vocal, right? So now let's listen to Andrew with the hard limiter at -3.
My favorite animated show right now, I love watching Bluey. If anyone's watched Bluey, you know that it is far
Off.
superior to any other show. And this is such a hot take. I would rather watch.
And so you'll notice we got our levels to like a nice level. We're hitting a good nice level here. It's tipping right at -3, which is great. But you'll notice now since we upped our gain, we can hear a lot more again of that tinniness that Andrew has going on of his voice bouncing off of all of the hard surfaces. So the last thing I usually do, and it'll really depend on what kind of microphone the guest might be using, is I will go in and manually add a denoise. So that, I always forget where, again, okay, noise reduction and restoration. I usually like to add a little bit of denoise. A little goes a long way with denoise, because even right now at what it's at is usually too high. But with the latest updates with Premiere, I've noticed actually it's kind of been calming it down. Let's see how it sounds.
Okay, so my favorite animated show right now, I love watching Bluey. If anyone's watched Bluey, you know that it is far superior to any other show. And this is such a hot take. I would rather watch Bluey.
So you heard the difference of what it is on versus off. Let's add it back in. And something I like using denoise, but sometimes I do feel like it's suppressing so many other noises that we do tend to lose sort of the fullness of the voice. So what I do is I come in and I make some manual adjustments. The first thing I do is I definitely mess with the amount here at the bottom. I usually drop that down to like 10%. So how much of the noise is it trying to remove?
Bluey than like SpongeBob or Rugrat, like any of those. Bluey, top tier. It's
Perfect. And then the other thing I will do is I will kind of mess with sort of the processing focus. So again, focus on the mid frequencies, remove the noise from specific areas, not necessarily across the board, the whole thing. So let's try the mid focus for now. And then let's play it back.
I love watching Bluey. If anyone's watched Bluey, you know that it is far superior to any other show. And this is such a hot take.
Yeah, and then let's remove.
I would rather watch Bluey than like SpongeBob or Rugrat.
Nice. So that sounds pretty good to me, considering that Andrew, I'm not sure if he actually had like a snazzy microphone or not. I think he's just using the headphones, the little mic that's available, in the sort of iPhone headphones. And so I think it actually sounds pretty good. It captured him pretty well, even though he's in a pretty tinny space. Now, we're going to do the same things to me as well, because you'll notice my microphone, the audio sounds good, but it is quite quiet. So Andrew, thank you so much for being on this. And I am generally a pretty soft-spoken person. Now, we could reinvent the wheel and go through and click around and find all of this again, or we can just come up to the top and just literally all I did is click, drag, drop it over. So again, work smarter, not harder. Just bring everything over. And then now let's see how I sound. So Andrew, thank you so much for being on this pretend podcast that isn't real, but is going to be great for. Nice. And I can tell that the denoise actually brought away some of those fans I had going on in the background. So let's just listen a little more, see if we want to make some adjustments. So Andrew, thank you so much for being on this pretend podcast that isn't real, but is going to be great for everyone to be able to practice editing audio to, because I purposely have. Yeah, you can see it's only really removing a little bit of noise. So I think this actually sounds pretty good. And again, this is what I do for most of the video podcasts that I work on through my production company, Stumblewell. So with that, this has now been affected to the entire track. Okay, so everything we did is all across Andrew's track. If this was an hour-long podcast and I just had all of Andrew's audio on the first track, it'd be good to go. I wouldn't actually need to make any further adjustments. The other way I'm going to show you how to edit audio, though, which, this way I would say you have a lot of control, but another thing you can do is just use the audio sound, the essential sound panel, to make adjustments there as well. And the way you do that is, let's start off with me this time, since I know Andrew's in the background. He's probably listening to himself like, oh my gosh, I'm tired of hearing my own voice. So we'll start with me this time. And now all you have to do is highlight everything that you want to affect the audio with, go into your essential sound panel, and we're going to highlight it as, or label it as, dialogue. That brings up our new window where we can start to make a lot of default changes in settings over here. So my favorite ones to work with when I am going to do the essential sound panels audio editing features is I tend to go with either I usually stay away from balanced female or male voice only because, again, they're kind of gendered. And so they're kind of assuming that if it's female, you're naturally going to have a higher tone, which for me isn't actually true. My voice is quite low. So I usually just go with podcast voice if I am going to use this. Now let's see what we're sounding like. You'll notice just now when I shifted it to podcast voice, you'll notice my waveforms kind of bumped up automatically. And this is Adobe using the audio information it has and sort of making best guess adjustments based on this preset. Let's see what it did. Let's see if we like it. Drew, thank you so much for being on this pretend podcast that isn't real, but it's going to be great for everyone to be able to practice. So you probably really hear the fans in the background now, and that's because it bumped up the gain quite a bit. One thing I usually do is I actually take away the enhanced speech feature. It works pretty well, and the enhanced speech feature is a little more gender neutral. It uses high tones or low tones, etc. But I usually actually just turn it off because the microphones I'm using are usually pretty decent, so I don't really need too much vocal enhancement. But depending on what you might be using, it might be something worth trying. So, Andrew, thank you so much for being on this pretend podcast that isn't. And then from there, I start to messing with the dynamics and the clarity. And also, sometimes I'll even go into the EQ and see what else I can do. So, I'm seeing subtle voice boost here. I might try that. Let's see. Isn't real, but it's going to be great for everyone to be able to practice editing audio too, because I purposely have fans going on in the back. I kind of like that pretty well, actually. Let's turn it down, see what that does. Background, so we can maybe mess with it in post and fix it. That's not too bad. Another one I like to use while we're here messing with things, and then we will move on to captions. Another one I like to use is, let's see, clean up noisy dialogue. But again, similar to the denoise feature that we used earlier, it might be worth, you're going to probably need to go in and finagle a few things. So let's try it out and see. In fact, let's restart completely. There we go. Dialogue, and then we'll go to, where were we at? Clean up noisy dialogue. All right, let's see what it does. Being on this pretend podcast that isn't real. Okay. It's going to be great for everyone to be able to practice editing audio too, because I purposely have fans. So it's doing really well. It's getting rid of a lot of that sort of low hum of the fans and things like that, but it's kind of clipping into me a little bit. So that's when I would open up the repair section and start to mess with probably the reduce noise. I would probably diminish it and bring it down so it's not being so epic on how much it's removing, because I would hate to encroach on the clarity of my voice, even if there is a little bit of noise in the background. So I dropped it down to 2. So, Andrew, thank you so much for being on this pretend podcast that isn't real, but it's going to be great for everyone to be able to practice editing audio too, because I purposely have fans going on in the background. That sounds pretty good. So in this case, I actually really like the clean up noisy dialogue feature over the podcast voice feature. But that's the beauty of utilizing Premiere Pro, even with editing, even with audio editing, even though it's not necessarily known for that, there's a lot at your disposal in here to work with. So we're going to Command Z a whole bunch and bring back everything I had done before. There they go. They start to appear. Perfect. So we're going to Command Z a whole bunch and bring back the original stuff we had done over here in our audio track mixer. And now I'm going to show you how we would maybe take a section of this and throw it into a new timeline and start working with our closed captions in our last few minutes. Y'all, I'm used to doing longer lives. This is 25 minutes. It's hard. No, and so there are a whole scene. All right, so let's find a section really quick that we can just make into a fun little quick caption for social, and then we'll finish it probably tomorrow.
Ooh, that's so fun.
What are your perfect? We're gonna start here and get Andrew's hot take. What are your favorite animated shows right now?
Okay.
And I'm just gonna take this whole section, Command C, Control C on a PC, and then we are gonna go to, I already made a sequence for y'all. If you go to your sequence folder that I provided, I already made a vertical cut downs sequence for you. We're gonna double click on that, nothing's in here. Command V, Control V to paste it. We're not going to worry about everything looking like blah right now. That'll be tomorrow's live. But for now, let's just make sure this is like cut down to where we want. What are your favorite animated shows right now?
Okay, so my favorite animated show right now, I love watching Bluey. If anyone's watched Bluey, you know that it is far superior to any other show.
Perfect. So everything here looks good. You'll notice though, our audio editing is gone. So all we have to do is right click on our other one, copy track effects, and then we're gonna paste them. So everything we did before now with our audio balancing, it's easily over here. What are your favorite? Perf. All right, so now we want to add some captions. Let's pretend that this is a cut down that we're going to use to promote this on social media. Again, we're going to fix all of how it looks in the next live tomorrow. But what we would do now is we would head over to our text tab. If it doesn't show up for you, window, text, for it to appear. And we're going to go to transcript. We're going to go ahead and transcribe the sequence using the power of Adobe Sensei it's going to shoot us up to the cloud, realize what we're saying, and give us a transcript back. So all you have to do is hit transcribe sequence. We're speaking English, but just so you're aware, there are a lot of different languages available. So this isn't just a English, American versus UK. There's quite a few languages. They're constantly adding more. So just keep that in mind. Just make sure you download them as well. I usually don't separate speakers because it's just kind of not necessary for what I know I want to do with this. And then I'm going to let it use a mix of all the tracks, but usually you can also have it only transcribe one track if that's what you want. There are times when that can be necessary. And then we're just going to hit the transcribe button. And again, using the power of Adobe Sensei, it is sending it up to the cloud, I didn't even get to finish my bit, transcribing what we're saying, and then shooting it back down. And now when we play back, it'll actually highlight the words as we go. What are your favorite animated shows right now?
Okay, so my favorite animated show right now, I love watching Bluey. If anyone's watched Bluey, you know that it is far superior.
So you'll notice a few little minor, it's a little gnat. You'll notice a few little minor, just like it thought he said watch instead of watched. All I did was just double click on here. And here, let me zoom in so y'all can see. There we go. All I did was double click and now I can just correct it. I would highly recommend if you are going to use closed captions, go through the transcript while it's in the transcript tab. Go through those first and make sure they're correct the way you want, because it's way easier to correct in the transcript tab than once you've actually built the captions. Not impossible, but easier.
Watch Bluey, you know that it is far superior to any other show. And this is such a hot take. I would rather watch Bluey.
Okay, so he says hot take, not heartache. So let's fix that.
Hot take. I would rather watch Bluey than like SpongeBob.
And then I see blue-eyed instead of Bluey. Hopefully I'm spelling this right. Sorry, Andrew, if I'm not.
Than like SpongeBob or Rugrat, like any of those. Bluey, top tier. It's just really smart and really fun, and they all have Australian accents, and it's great.
Okay, so now our captions look pretty accurate. That looks great. Let's go ahead, or excuse me, our transcription looks pretty accurate. That's great. Let's go ahead and turn these into captions. If we wanted to be epic about it, we could also change speaker names, things like that. But that's more for like the metadata side than like creating captions for social side. Now let's switch over to the caption tab and we're going to hit create captions from transcript. That'll bring up this new bounding box for us. Now, generally speaking, if you're creating captions for social media, subtitle default is going to be your way to go. These other options that you see here are more for industry broadcast standards around closed captions, because they need to be formatted a certain way. But, you know, internet's a lawless place, so we're just chilling. So we're going to have it on subtitle. We don't have a style, but you can actually program different caption styles into Premiere Pro. It's very easy. And what I usually do is I usually try to minimize the length of captions to characters to like 33. And then I usually up the duration to 4 just for readability. And this is 4 seconds. Decide whether you want single lines or double lines. When it's for vertical content like this, I usually go single. And then, yeah, let's create our captions. Boom. So as you can see, we now have a captions track up at the top with all of our captions available. Let's see what we're looking like here. Here, I'll put us full screen. What are your favorite animated shows right now?
Okay, so my
Cool. So, all right, they look pretty good. Now, what I will usually do is I will then come into our essential graphics panel and start messing with them to make them look well. But we will do that tomorrow because now I'm going to show you how I will finish creating this piece of online content to promote said podcast. So, check back in with me tomorrow. Thank you so much for hopping on this live with me. Again, I'm Hallease, a digital storyteller and video producer, and I'll see you then. Bye.